I'm Natasha Kaufman, and welcome to my podcast, Don't Just Talk, Say Something, Lessons on 20 Years of Business. Over the past 2 decades of running my public relations firm, NKPR, I'm so grateful to have met, worked with, and learned from so many talented industry leaders. And I'm so excited to be able to share their stories and life lessons with all of you on this podcast. Taylor Kaye, an acclaimed and beloved media personality, and I launched the F Words podcast together in September of 2016. It was a space for us to come together, to chat, laugh, and share everything about our favorite F words in our lives, like family, friends, fashion, finance, and doing the podcast with Taylor has definitely been a highlight over the past 20 years at NKPR. It was a really special process recording the F Words with Taylor, and so of course I had to invite her on this new show. And when it comes to Taylor, nothing is off limits. Taylor and I share the importance of showing up for people in your life and also yourself, and some of the lessons we've learned from our previous relationships. Here's our conversation. I'm excited to have Taylor on the podcast because when I think about the last 20 years of NKPR and being in business, you know, Taylor, you come to mind, truly. We've been friends for 2 decades.
Yeah.
But I think also, you know, what this new podcast is all about is like, what are all the lessons that I've learned in the last 20 years that our audience can learn as well?
Yeah.
And I would say one of the biggest ones is you and I started a podcast 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was probably one of the first podcasts. And I remember how it came about. We were at a party, as we often are. And you had said, hey, wouldn't it be great if we did a podcast together and we get to see each other more? And I was like, okay. And then literally a week later, we were doing our F Words podcast. And so for me, that was like, you know, a big sort of eye opener, and just, you know, certainly supported the fact of, you know, what I always knew, which is you sometimes just have to do it and you have to try it. I mean, the first thing I have to ask you is, do you miss our podcast?
Yes, all the time. I miss it. And you know what? I remember we were at that party and it was hectic because I think I was the second year into my this other radio gig, and TIFF was coming up, and we were slammed, and I just said, listen, you just got to come on Sunday, show up on Sunday, and I think that's a lesson, showing up for each other as friends, personally, professionally, which we've done for each other.
That's a big buzzword, actually. You're hearing it everywhere, the power of showing up.
Yeah.
And that's exactly, like, to me, when I think about this particular podcast, that's what it's about. It's like, you know, to me, that's the biggest lesson. Sometimes you just have to show up. And I felt that we certainly, you're right, have always shown up for each other. And with the podcast that we started in 2016, it was just, show up. And sometimes we would not even know what our topic was until we actually showed up and we're like, what are we going through? What are we feeling?
Yeah.
What are we seeing in the news? And our topics were sometimes or often were just grounded in what's happening right now, which is, I think, why so many people really connected with it.
Yeah, I for sure. And you know what? And we were in a studio, and I loved how we still prepped, but we were doing stuff that was in the moment that really people were like, wow, this is happening to me in my life. Whether, you know, I think some of the social media podcasts that hit with people, like we would talk about followers, we talk about things that was happening with us personally too in our lives.
We did, that's true.
Sometimes I would overshare. And that's okay, because sometimes, not too much, it wasn't like TMI, but I think people want to hear, just like on the radio, just like podcast, when people are listening to the F Words, we're in your car. I know I'm saying we because I still feel like we're in your car.
We will always be a we.
Yeah. Where, you know, it's very personal. You're in people's showers, right? Or you're in their living room. We're in their ears. So they feel really connected.
What were some of your earliest memories of us?
Oh, God. Okay, so I would say when I came to the city, I'd been working radio for years, but just outside the city, and I'd hear about this Natasha.
Oh my God.
Because I'm like, I need to, when I hit the ground in Toronto for one of my stations, it was a top 40 station, which was all about events and clubs, and no one could pronounce your last name right.
That's true. They still can't, by the way. It's Quaifman, it's Kaufman, it's just NK.
So I'm like, I got to find this NK. And film festival was really big. Look, I'm so loud, right? I'm like, but film festival was so big in the city, and I was working with a company called Rogers that owned pretty much the film festival kind of junkets and things at the time. And oh God, what is his name? Oh my God, Brian. He was like a general manager. I don't know. Doesn't matter. It was a GM of a TV station.
Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about. What was his name?
This is 20 years ago. Anyway,
I know exactly who you're talking about.
He's
yeah.
like, you've got to connect with Natasha.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, this Natasha girl keeps coming up. We connected, I think at a party. I might have reached out, and then that was that. Then I would see you at red carpets. You'd be bringing people. You knew that I was professional. I wasn't going to be an idiot on the red carpet.
I mean, that would have been 25 years ago, because before I started NKPR, which was back in 2002, as we're celebrating our 20th anniversary, I was working for Liberty Entertainment Group. And they, as you know, had all the biggest parties. And that's how we actually first met, because you were doing all of their
live to airs.
Live to airs.
Stop it. Now we're going back. Now we've known each other 25 years, because I would do all of their big... When I came to the city, there was not a lot of female DJs that would do live to airs, and I did not. And what a live to air is you do a live broadcast from the club. So you'd mix at the broadcast, you'd talk, and it would be live on the air. But I was doing a lot in a town called London, Ontario, and there was a lot of females. So when I came to Toronto, they're like, no, we won't need you for that. And then all of a sudden I was doing 5 a week, because they didn't have a female that, you know, legally you couldn't drink on the air. Most of the females would just get hammered and you could lose your license. I was a pro and I wanted to go in, and then I'd meet Natasha. That's how it's Liberty. Oh my God.
It was Liberty. It was going back quite a bit. And so when you think about, you know, the power of showing up, think about the last, 20 or 25 years of your career. What stands out for you in that respect? So, to get to where you are today, I mean, you have a very deep career. You do a lot of different things. You're super talented between the content creation that you do, all the radio work that you do. It's extensive, and you're a mom, and you balance it all. What does showing up actually really mean to you?
I think, showing up for your friends and family, being kind, which we've talked about. In this industry, I mean, there's a saying, you're as good as your last show. And you have to be a kind person so that you can show up for the next person. I've showed up for people that have lost their jobs, lost family members. I've been there. And I think that's being a good person, being a good friend, being a good daughter. And I'm always there for people, for showing up. And sometimes too much. Remember, we've had these conversations where I say yes all the time. Now, during COVID has passed the last 2 years, I've had family members that have been really sick. I've had to make different decisions in my life. So I've had to say no to some things. And it's been really difficult, emotionally, it's been hard.
It's your lesson, actually, because I feel like that's, you are there for everyone all the time.
Yeah.
And even actually when I saw you today, you said, I need to book a vacation with my whole family. And I said, well, why don't you just book a vacation either for you and or you and Greg, because you need to, showing up, by the way, isn't just you just said it. You said it's about showing up for 90,000 people.
Yeah.
But I just want to remind you, you actually have to show up for yourself.
Yeah.
And you can't show up for everybody else unless you do that. And so I want to remind you of that.
And I do. You know what? I did show up last weekend, and when I binge watched something on Netflix, the Anna Delvey.
Oh my God, the
Anna.
scammer.
Yeah, the scammer. And then I'm like, nobody come in. And I never do that, because we'll talk about shows, and I'm like, I haven't seen it. So you're right. I mean, I think it's important for people to show up for themselves too and take care of themselves. So maybe that's a lesson that I should take forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's, I think that that statement is just really powerful, but we always forget, all of us forget that you can't show up for everyone else if you don't do it for yourself, because, you need to take that time.
I'm just going back that my mind is blown that we've known each other 25 years now. When you do that,
it's unbelievable
crazy.
Considering we're only 30. I mean, I don't know how that actually happened.
I was a fetus. What are you talking about? I was 12 when I came to the city.
Okay, so some fun questions. What are some of your favorite and funniest memories of us working together on the podcast, let's say?
On the podcast? Well, I podcast or film festival stuff or parties too. Well, I would say you do a lot of stuff, obviously, with APJ, and hosting and doing the auction here at your house has been fun. The podcast we always had a blast with the podcast. We always we would find out, I think I'd know Natasha, and then I'm like, what the hell? How did I not know this about you? Right? So I think some of the fun podcasts for sure would be the social media podcast, Getting Deep, and also your spiritual what is her name? The spiritual guidance.
Oh my God, she was Amy.
She
She
was
was the best.
because she would put I'm like, what? How does she know this stuff? I hadn't told Natasha about a renovation we were doing, and Amy knew about it. And then it just blew my mind.
Remember Amy predicted that Chantal was going to be a grandmother? She's a grandmother.
Yeah.
Ooh, we have to have Amy. Actually, I have to have Amy on this podcast. It's true. I think that guidance comes from a lot of different places. It comes from your friends. It comes from your family. But I have no issues in admitting that I get some of my guidance from like a spiritual counselor. I mean, call her a psychic, call her whatever you want to call her.
Give her a name. Whatever. Yeah.
But I mean, my Amy, we'll call her. But she's amazing. And sometimes when I'm having a rough day, I will text her and ask her, like, hey, like this is happening. Like, what's going on in the universe right now that this is happening? She'll often say, you're in Mercury retrograde, or like the moon is in blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, okay, should I have known that?
You know what? One place, you showed up for me when I was going to New York for a job interview. And I had no place to stay. It was like, and I was making radio money. So for people, like it's like 3 kids, and Natasha had her place, and you gave up your place to me. It was in Soho, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, and it was like, and it was just, you didn't have to do that. I know you would always do something, but I mean,
yeah. I mean, listen,
I was like, I'm in freaking Soho. This is like,
it's funny. I have a lot of memories in that apartment because I felt like that apartment was definitely. It felt like a real safe space, for me and my friends. And, we do work living in Toronto and working in Toronto. We do a lot of work cross border in New York City. And I thought if I could ever, help a friend, I was always happy to do that. I had one of my friends, Michael Mignelli, he stayed there, I think, for about 6 or 8 weeks while he was setting up his job there. Yeah. I remember Deirdre Kelly. That's what it's there for.
It was a good place. And I mean, I was trying to get another job with an agent out there, and if I did not go and if I did not stay at her place, I wouldn't have my agent in New York. Aww. So, I mean, I still have him to this day, and he's a big, and of course, saying that you're staying in Soho to like a New Yorker, it's like very fancy. I can't
remember, was it my apartment on West Broadway or when I moved to Hudson?
Hudson.
Hudson, yeah. That was my favorite apartment.
And Natasha was like, it's not that big. I walked in, I'm like, holy shit. Like, what are you talking about?
It was nice. It was well space planned.
It was huge to me. I'm like, I didn't want to touch anything. I'm like, is there a camera? No.
It had good ceilings because I could put my artwork in there. I thought
huge
it had
artwork.
Good ceilings. One of the questions I wanted to ask is, so think about, and we've known each other for a long time. Is there anything you want to ask me that you've never asked me before? Anything you want to know about me that you feel you might not know?
This is dangerous. I know you've been married many times.
That was unnecessary, but okay.
How many exact times? Can I ask that?
You can ask.
Everyone's always asked me because I know a little bit, but I'm like, okay.
Well, so.
And listen, I've got an uncle who's been married 7 times.
No.
One slow dance and I'll buy you a house.
3.
3.
So, I mean, you were probably expecting like 6.
No, I was expecting
like J-Lo numbers, but I have not.
I thought it was 3, but I thought, okay, but there was a 1 that you kind of.
No, but 1 wasn't an actual marriage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The last person, we never really got married. So
okay, that's it, guys.
That wasn't an actual marriage.
Am I putting you on
it was
your
a party.
spot?
We threw a party. No, listen, I'm always transparent. Happy to be transparent, but that's a great question because you're right. Lots of people wonder, and I get some DMs every once in a while.
Right.
But I haven't hit J-Lo numbers.
Eric's it. This is it.
This is it. And you know what is interesting about that actual question and to give you an honest answer, this is where my career and my life sometimes get blurred because when I think about past relationships and the choices that I've made, they're often PR choices. I think this person would fit really well into my life because of all these boxes that they tick. But the reality is the only box they have to tick is, are they kind and are they nice? And
but a lot of people do that too in relationships too. We've talked about that. Do they check these boxes? We've had a podcast, I think, about that.
But I don't think that's the right thing to do because I think ultimately you can't put someone's character in a box.
Yeah.
And you can't put are they just a nice and good human being in a box? We often have 10 or 20 different criterias. And so, if I had thought like that, 15 years ago, maybe the 3 could have been cut down to, I don't know, maybe the 3 couldn't have been cut down.
But I think
frankly.
it's all lessons. You know what? Like Greg is a lot older than me. I dated many times. I'd lived with different people. So you could say that I was, married a couple times too, because common law.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got together with Greg, I remember my boss, one of your digital people know her too. I won't say anyway. They said, enjoy this marriage. This is your starter marriage.
Oh, wow.
And I thought it was really, and now when I see this person, because Greg and I have been together like 20, 22 years, and I'm like, but why would you say that to someone too?
Yeah.
We all have to make, just like business, sometimes not the relationships are business, but we have to learn from those relationships.
But she was projecting, by the way. Like, so she might have been in her starter marriage, so she was projecting.
Right.
I mean, you're right about the lessons, because when I think about, there's Justin's dad, and that was, as soon as Justin was born, we broke up. So like that happened because I was meant to have my son.
Yeah.
Then I was married, and it was a good marriage for 10 years until it wasn't.
Yeah.
And we grew apart. Then there was the relationship that we don't really speak about, but that wasn't a marriage, but we threw a big party, and that was definitely a PR relationship, I would say. And then there's Eric, who's just like a really nice, lovely
I remember
human being.
you calling me and saying how you had met him on Raya. And I'm like, what? Oh my God. And I was so excited for you. Like I could tell in your voice. And I know you're happy not all the time, but I know but you were truly, I could tell, like, I'm like, I think this is it. Like I honestly felt that this was it, because you were just so happy.
Well, it feels like a real partnership.
Yeah.
Because it's the first time probably that I feel like it's not all one-sided.
Yeah.
And we do things together. And we're open. We can talk about anything and everything. And really, even to this day, we might disagree on things, but we don't argue.
Yeah.
And so it's probably one of the most mature relationships I've ever had, which is interesting because
I love him.
Yeah, what's not to love? He's like really sweet and so nice, and he moved to Canada.
I know. I'm like, dude moved to Canada in a pandemic, got a dog. This is a real deal. And his dad is nice. His kids, right?
Ralph is the
right?
best. Oh
the
my
family's
God.
Nice, right?
Yeah. No, I got really lucky. Taylor, thank you. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It feels strange to be doing this without you, but amazing that I'm actually able to do it with you.
Happy 20 years.
Thank you.
I'm coming back on at some point. I don't know. I'll do a takeover.
Oh, I love that. Yes, takeover. Woohoo! Thank you. Mwah.
Thanks.
Of course, Taylor asked me that question. Was I surprised? Not really. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I always love hearing from you. Feel free to DM me at Natasha NKPR, and don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review and rating. Until next time.